All right, ready to dive in. Today, we're heading to the Faroe Islands.
Sounds fascinating. What's on the agenda?
Well, we're checking out the latest news from like Kringvarp Føroya in .falfo and VP.fo. The usual suspects.
Ah, so we're getting the real local perspective.
Exactly. By the end of this, we'll practically be speaking Faroes, or at least understanding their current events.
I'm all for that. Let's hear what's making headlines.
Okay, so first up, elections are coming up, and it's a hot topic, especially in Tórshavn, their capital.
Local elections always have that extra bit of intensity, don't they?
For sure. And this time there's a new group in the running.
Oh, really? Spill the tea.
They're called Kommunulistin, which I guess literally translates to municipal list. Kind of straightforward, huh?
Straight to the point, yeah. New parties always shake things up a bit. Makes you wonder what they're bringing to the table.
Well, speaking of shaking things up, there's this whole debate going on about how Faroe's political parties get their funding.
The money trail. Always a sensitive topic. What's the issue here?
Seems like some folks aren't too happy about Danish taxpayer money being used.
I can see how that could be a point of contention. A question of autonomy, perhaps?
Exactly. Some are saying it's crucial for a fair election process, levels the playing field.
Makes sense. Smaller parties might struggle without that support.
Right. But the other side of the argument is saying it creates a conflict of interest.
So the worry is that it might influence Faroese politics.
Yeah, the idea is that parties should be funded by, well, Faroese people. That way, they're truly representing their interests.
It's a classic dilemma, isn't it? Balancing financial support with maintaining true independence.
Absolutely. And then there's this story that's a bit of a mystery, honestly. It involves Ingelin D. Strum, a government minister, and the Leinster's Malin Vinden.
That's their parliamentary ombudsman, right? Sort of like an independent watchdog.
Exactly. But the details are hush-hush. All we know is there's a complaint against Strum being reviewed.
Ooh, intrigue. Definitely need to keep an eye on that one.
Right. Okay, let's move on to the economy. Big news. An Icelandic company, Hagar HF, is buying SMS.
SMS. Refresh my memory. What is that?
They're a huge retailer in the Faroes.
Yeah.
We're talking Miklagarær, Bonus, Milnerner, basically all the big stores.
Oh, wow, that's significant. Hagar HF is a major player in Iceland, known for its competitive prices.
Yeah, so people are wondering, will this mean lower prices in the Faroes?
It's certainly possible. They might also bring in a wider range of products.
Okay, so potentially good news for consumers. But what about local businesses? Can they compete with this Icelandic giant?
That's the big question. Will they try to match prices or focus on offering something unique, maybe locally sourced goods?
It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Now, on a brighter note, Føroya Banki, one of their main banks, is predicting good financial results.
That's excellent news. A strong financial sector is crucial for any economy, especially one as specialized as the Faroes.
Definitely a positive sign. But there's also a report out that's causing some concern. It's about Víkingur.
Which is their public housing system, right?
Yeah. Apparently, it's not financially sustainable. The rental rates aren't covering costs.
That's a tough situation. Affordable housing is so important, but the system needs to be able to function.
It's a real balancing act. It'll be interesting to see how they address it. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's look at the Faroe Islands on the global stage.
Okay, what are they up to internationally?
Well, they're actively participating in the Arctic Circle Assembly.
That's a pretty big deal. It shows they're engaged in the Arctic region, especially as climate change becomes more pressing.
Absolutely. And they're also providing aid to Lebanon, after that recent conflict.
That's commendable. Shows a commitment to global solidarity.
It does. But back home, there are some serious issues to deal with, too. There's a court case going on right now involving sexual harassment allegations against a man.
That's heavy. How many people are involved?
It's a big case, with 12 women coming forward.
Wow, that's a lot of people. It's a reminder that these issues exist everywhere, even in a place like the Faroes.
Absolutely. And then there's this ongoing drug smuggling case that's causing quite a stir. It involves the Norrøna ferry.
Oh, the ferry that connects the Faroes to Iceland and Denmark. What happened?
Apparently, a large amount of cash and drugs were found on board.
Yikes. That's a wake-up call about the challenges of crime prevention, even in a relatively isolated location.
It seems the Faroes aren't immune to these global issues. Okay, I think we need some good news now.
I agree. Let's hear something positive.
Well, Víkingur just won the Faroese Premier League. It's their third consecutive win.
Wow, a dynasty. Congratulations to them.
And Heidi Sevdal won Player of the Month for the second time in a row.
She's on fire. And it's great to see the Faroes excelling in sports. They even have the U19 volleyball tournament coming up in Tórshavn.
Yeah, those events bring a lot of excitement and national pride. Speaking of community, the Frelsesarmeen, the Salvation Army, is celebrating a big milestone.
Oh, really? What is it?
They've been in the Faroe Islands for 100 years.
A century of service? That's incredible. They do such important work providing support and assistance to those who need it.
Absolutely. They're a true pillar of the community. Now, for something a little different, John Millamar, a Faroese author, has a new book coming out, and it's causing quite a buzz.
Oh, what's it about?
It's about some shocking events that happened in the Faroes. He's known for digging deep and uncovering hidden stories.
I see. And on a more artistic note, there's a new exhibition opening in Tórshavn. It features the work of Regin Jørgensen.
Regin Jørgensen, the painter. I've heard his name, but not really familiar with his work.
He's known for these large, abstract paintings, really captures the power of the Faroes landscape. Bold colors, big brushstrokes, very immersive.
Sounds like a must-see. Okay, before we wrap up this part, a couple more quick hits. There's been a strange series of bird deaths in Fyglafjörður.
Oh no, that's concerning. Any ideas what's causing it?
It's still under investigation, but it's definitely unsettling.
Hopefully they'll get to the bottom of it.
Fingers crossed. And last but not least, there's a new hotel being built in Klaksvik.
Interesting. Is that a sign of growing tourism in the Faroes?
It could be. Maybe they're anticipating more visitors, especially with all the events and buzz happening around the islands.
And there's a new music festival in Tórshavn.
Yeah, called Scrapped. The Faroes are definitely becoming a cultural hub, even attracting international attention.
It seems like there's a lot happening in the Faroes these days.
There is, and we've only just scratched the surface.
Welcome back to our Faroes news adventure. You know, thinking about Hagar HF buying SMS, it's not just about groceries, is it?
It is a pretty big shift in the retail landscape. What are you thinking?
Well, Hagar HF, they're not just a company, they're a big part of Iceland's economy. This move, it could mean more outside interest in the Faroes market.
So it's like the Faroes are becoming even more connected to the global scene.
Exactly. Which, well, it's exciting, right?
Yeah.
But also maybe a little bit scary.
Yeah. How do they keep... What's special about Faroes businesses, amidst all this change?
It's a tough balance, holding on to your roots while growing and adapting. And speaking of global connections, that drug smuggling case, the one with the Norrøna ferry.
Yeah, it really shows how these things, they don't stop at borders.
It's a wake-up call. Even a place like the Faroes, they can get caught up in these international criminal networks.
So what can they do? I mean, it seems like such a huge problem.
Well, it's about strengthening security, obviously, but also working with other countries, sharing information, that kind of thing.
Makes sense. And probably focusing on prevention within the Faroes too, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's got to be a multi-pronged approach. Okay, but let's shift gears a bit. Remember that U19 volleyball tournament?
Yeah, the one happening in Tórshavn.
Yeah.
Super exciting.
It's great to see the Faroes hosting these international events. It's a chance for their athletes to really shine.
Plus, it brings in visitors, boosts tourism. It's a win-win.
For sure. Okay, before we move on, I wanted to go back to that book we mentioned by John Millamar.
The one about shocking events.
Yeah.
Yeah, what makes it so gripping, do you think?
Millamar, he's just a fantastic researcher. He really digs deep into the archives, finds these hidden stories.
And he's not afraid to stir the pot a little.
Not at all. He's a great storyteller, keeps you hooked.
So it's not just what he writes about, but how he writes it.
Exactly. This book, it's bound to get people talking, maybe even change some minds about Faroes history. Okay, now back to politics for a minute. We were talking about the funding of Faroes political parties.
Right, that whole debate about Danish taxpayer money.
Yeah. It's a complex issue. Those who support it, they say it's essential for a healthy democracy, keeps things fair.
But the other side's worried about outside influence, right?
Exactly. They believe it could compromise the independence of Faroes politics.
So it's about finding that balance, supporting democracy while protecting their own decision-making.
It's a debate that's not going away anytime soon, especially with the elections coming up.
Right, those elections. And speaking of, we have to talk more about Kommunulistin, this new group, the municipal list.
Yeah, they're really interesting. They're all about local issues, promising a more grassroots kind of government.
So appealing to people who want change, who want to feel more connected to their representatives.
Exactly. They're big on affordable housing, sustainable development, making sure local services are top-notch, stuff that affects people's daily lives.
Do you think they have a real chance? I mean, unseating established parties is tough.
It's hard to predict. Faroese voters, they tend to be pretty practical. They like stability.
But maybe people are ready for something different.
It's possible. This election, it's going to be a fascinating showdown. Experience versus new ideas, the old guard versus the newcomers.
Like a political drama unfolding.
It really is. Shows that even in a place like the Faroes, politics are constantly changing.
All right, back for the final leg of our Faroes news journey. You know that report about Boost to Deer, their public housing system, it really stuck with me.
Yeah, it's one thing to talk about the economy in general, but this is about people's homes, their lives.
Exactly. And it sounds like they're at a crossroads. What are the options even? How do they fix this?
Well, they could raise rents, but that's tough on people who are already struggling.
Right, and then if they cut back on building new housing, that just makes the shortage worse.
It's a tricky situation for sure. This is going to be a big issue in the upcoming elections. You can bet on that.
It's a chance for these new parties, like Kommunulistin, to show what they're all about. Speaking of community, I wanted to circle back to the Salvation Army.
Yeah, 100 years in the Faroe Islands, that's quite a legacy.
They seem to do so much, it's hard to even summarize.
Well, they're all about compassion, practical help. It's not just about giving handouts, it's about helping people get back on their feet.
Providing food, shelter, job training, counseling. It's really impressive.
They've been a constant, a source of support for generations.
And they really embody that strong sense of community you see in the Faroes. Okay, remember those mysterious bird deaths? Any news on that front?
It seems like avian influenza, bird flu, is the most likely cause. They're still doing tests, but that's what they're thinking.
Bird flu, wow. That's not something you hear about every day.
It can be really devastating, not just for the birds themselves, but potentially for humans, too.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we're all connected to the natural world, for better or worse. Okay, well, that about wraps up our deep dive into Faroes news.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
We've seen a community facing challenges, both local and global, but also embracing opportunities, pushing forward.
There's a real sense of resilience in the Faroe Islands. It's inspiring.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed exploring the Faroe Islands with us. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.